Aging and Old Age, a Grail-inspired clarification for mankind. Introduction. Aging and old age are not burdens. They are revelations. Humanity has grown up under the shadow of a profound misunderstanding, that aging is a tragedy, a decline, a slow loss of value, beauty, purpose, and meaning. Modern man, driven by materialism and the feverish worship of physical youth, has hidden from himself the spiritual reality of growing older. He has wrapped this natural and sacred process in fear, denial, vanity, and resistance. Thus, what should be a luminous unfolding has become a source of suffering. But this suffering does not come from the laws of creation. It comes from the human being's wrong inner attitude toward those laws. The Grail Message reveals that life on earth is governed by unchangeable laws, laws that guide growth, maturity, and the gradual loosening from earthly matter. Aging is woven into these laws. It is not a curse, but a form of mercy. It grants the spirit time to harvest the fruits of its sowing, opportunity to mature in understanding, freedom from the intensity of youthful passions, and preparation for the great transition into the beyond. If humanity truly understood aging, it would not fear it. It would revere it. This book therefore aims to 1. Clarify the true nature of aging. Show that aging is not merely biological decay but a spiritual process governed by the eternal laws. 2. Correct the false beliefs that create despair and suffering. Exposing illusions about youth, strength, attractiveness, usefulness, and identity. 3. Enlighten the reader. Revealing the deep purpose, dignity, and blessing hidden within old age. 4. Offer a way out. For those trapped in fear, pride, or misconceptions, showing the path toward peace, self-understanding, and genuine readiness for life beyond the earthly plane. For the young, this book provides orientation. How to build a healthy old age long before the body shows signs of aging. For the elderly, this book offers comfort, clarity, and awakening. That it is never too late to realign with the light. The Grail Message shines upon aging not with sentiment, but with truth, pure, sharp, liberating truth. And in this truth is the healing of modern man's greatest misunderstanding about his earthly existence. Aging is not death approaching. Aging is the spirit awakening. Part 1. The nature of aging. A spiritual unfolding in the laws of creation. Chapter 1. What aging truly is. Humanity sees aging only through the eyes of the body and therefore misunderstands everything about it. To most people, aging means weakening strength, fading beauty, reduced activity, shrinking influence, nearing death. But these are only the outermost shells, the physical signs. They say almost nothing about what is truly happening. Aging is not a bodily process. The body ages because something deeper is unfolding. The spirit is ripening. Just as fruit on a tree moves toward sweetness and readiness for harvest, the human spirit, through decades of experience, trials, joys, and decisions, gradually matures. It is this inner growth that manifests outwardly as aging. The body is like a garment. It is worn, not as punishment, but as service, a tool for earthly learning. When the inner being has matured sufficiently, the garment naturally loosens, softens, and prepares to fall away. This loosening is what man calls aging. In early life, the spirit works strongly through the body, giving it vitality, elasticity, and glow. As the spirit gradually withdraws its direct pressure upon the physical form, because it now needs inner reflection more than outer action, the body reflects this change. Thus aging is a shift of emphasis. From outward striving right-pointing arrow to inward deepening. From expansion right-pointing arrow to consolidation. From experience right-pointing arrow to understanding. From sowing right-pointing arrow to harvesting. Seen in the light of the laws, aging is beautiful. It is the final blooming before the spirit steps into a higher existence. Only human fear and ignorance have darkened what is naturally luminous. Chapter 2. Aging begins in the spirit, not the body. The common belief is that aging starts when the cells weaken, the bones thin, or the organs lose efficiency. Science looks for the causes of aging in chemistry, genetics, or biology. But the laws of creation operate from inside to outside, never the reverse. Everything that happens in matter is an echo of something happening in the spirit. The spirit is the true life core of the human being. It animates the body from within. It gives warmth, vitality, intuition, and movement. The body, on its own, is lifeless matter that can only react to the radiations of the spirit. In youth, the spirit radiates outward strongly, full of movement, seeking experience, exploring life, sowing deeds, thoughts, and choices. As the decades unfold and the spirit gathers impressions, it begins to turn inward. It seeks consolidation, reflection, and preparation for the beyond. Therefore, its force radiates less into the body. This is the true beginning of aging. The body slows down because the spirit changes direction. The body weakens because the spirit no longer drives it outward. The body becomes quieter because the spirit is gathering itself. Thus, aging is not decay, it is withdrawal. A lawful, purposeful withdrawal. Just as the sun sets not because it loses power, but because the earth turns away from it, the body's decline reflects a shift in the spirit's focus. This means, one may have a young body but an old spirit right-pointing arrow early aging. One may have an old body but a fresh, bright spirit right-pointing arrow graceful aging. Spirit determines the body, not the other way around. The more a person lives in truth, purity, and gratitude, the more harmonious the aging process becomes. Fear speeds it up, vanity distorts it, resistance darkens it, acceptance and spiritual striving illuminate it. Aging begins in the spirit because aging is for the spirit. Chapter 3, The Purpose of Growing Older. If aging is part of the laws of creation, then it has a purpose, clear, wise, and beneficial. The human being suffers only because he does not understand this purpose. Growing older has 4 noble goals. 1. Harvesting what one has sown. Life is a field of seeds. Every thought, word, and action plants something. Youth is the time of sowing. Adulthood is the time of tending. Old age is the time of harvesting. The fruits may be inner peace, humility, clarity, or regret, confusion, bitterness. Whatever the harvest reveals, it is a gift. It shows the soul what it must transform, heal, or let go. Without old age, man would never see the full consequences of his earthly decisions. He would walk blindly through life. Aging opens his eyes. 2. Slowing down for inner reflection. The feverish movement of youth cannot last forever, it is good only for gathering experience. But deep understanding comes only in stillness. Old age provides this stillness. The body slows so that the spirit may awaken more fully. In youth, man looks outward. In old age, he finally looks inward. This inward turn is not decline but elevation. It is the spirit preparing for higher realms. 3. Detaching from earthly attachments. Possessions, desires, ambitions, and material pursuits naturally lose their grip as one ages. This is not loss. It is liberation. The spirit cannot pass into the beyond heavily burdened. Thus, old age is a gentle, gradual loosening of earthly ties. A mercy of the Creator. The spirit is not torn suddenly from matter, but released gently, layer by layer. 4. Preparing for the transition into the beyond. Death is not the end, it is a change of garments. Old age prepares the spirit for this transition. The slowing of the body. The fading of earthly cravings. The increase of longing for peace. The deeper consideration of life's meaning. All these are signs that the spirit is orienting itself toward home. In this way, aging is the final classroom. And old age is the doorway to the next stage of existence. Growing older is not punishment. It is completion. It is fulfillment. It is mercy. It is preparation for ascent. Only when humanity understands this will it stop fearing aging and begin to walk through life with wisdom, dignity, and inner peace. Chapter 4. The Three Sacred Stages of Earthly Life. Human life on Earth is not random, chaotic, or accidental. It unfolds according to precise spiritual laws that guide the spirit from awakening to maturity, and finally to release. When seen through the light of the Grail Message, earthly life consists of three sacred stages, each indispensable for the spirit's development. Youth, the time of sowing. Adulthood, the time of building. Old age, the time of harvest and release. Each stage is purposeful and carries divine meaning. When man resists these stages, when he tries to prolong youth unnaturally, fear adulthood, or hide from old age, suffering arises. Harmony comes only when the human being aligns himself with the natural rhythm of spiritual growth. 1. Youth, the time of sowing. Youth is the period where the spirit thrusts strongly into the earthly body, radiating vitality, courage, curiosity, and expansiveness. It is the stage where the human being absorbs experiences at great speed, forms habits and foundational attitudes, sows seeds through thoughts, words, and deeds, establishes the direction of his entire life journey. In youth, the spirit's power is outwardly focused. This is why the young feel compelled to explore, try, test, challenge, and expand. It is a sacred drive placed by the Creator, ensuring the gathering of impressions needed for maturation. But youth is also the stage where most errors are made, not because youth is foolish, but because it is the stage of learning through experience. These early seeds will return later in life as harvest. Youth is fire. Youth is movement. Youth is the planting ground for everything that comes after. 2. Adulthood, the time of building. In adulthood, the spirit no longer rushes outward blindly. It begins to consolidate. This stage is marked by responsibility, mastery, purposeful work, and the building of one's earthly and spiritual foundation. The energies of adulthood are stable, structured, and disciplined. The human being is meant to shape his environment, form meaningful relationships, and contribute to the world through purposeful effort. The adult phase is where the consequences of youth's sowing first become visible. A person who sowed clarity, diligence, and truthfulness in youth now builds a strong life. A person who sowed carelessness, indolence, and falsehood finds adulthood heavy and confusing. In this stage, the spirit gathers strength, depth, and wisdom through real responsibility, not for itself alone, but for others. Adulthood is structure. Adulthood is creation. Adulthood is the working out of the life task brought from the beyond. 3. Old age, the time of harvest and release. Old age is not decline, it is completion. It is the final ripening of the spirit, the moment where all the experiences of life condense into clarity. In this stage, the human being is meant to reap what he has sown, understand the meaning behind his experiences, detach from earthly passions, and begin turning inward toward the beyond. The slowing of the body is not punishment but preparation. It gives the spirit space to reflect deeply and to withdraw gently from earthly matter. Old age is the time of truth. Masks fall. Pretenses fade. Only what is real remains. Thus, old age is sacred because it reveals the spirit as it truly is. The earthly journey begins in fire, youth, builds in strength, adulthood, and ends in quiet illumination, old age. Only by honoring all three stages does man fulfill the purpose of his earthly existence. Part 2. The origin of suffering in aging. How wrong notions darken what should be light. The suffering associated with aging today is not caused by the laws of nature. The laws themselves are perfect, wise, and merciful. The suffering arises entirely from humanity's wrong attitudes, false concepts, and materialistic distortions. The light reveals that man suffers in aging only because he has lived wrongly before aging, because he built his life on illusions that collapse with time. Chapter 5. False concepts of aging in modern culture. Modern culture has poisoned the human understanding of aging. Through materialism, vanity, and shallow ideals, society has glorified youth and treated aging as a defect, a disease, or a shame to be hidden. This distortion of values is one of the greatest tragedies of modern times. Humanity has replaced truth with illusions such as youth equals worth, beauty equals value, strength equals significance, old age equals decline, the body is the self. These illusions are deadly because they anchor a person's self-worth in something temporary, fragile, and destined to change. Thus, when the natural signs of aging appear, wrinkles, gray hair, slower movement, the person feels fear, shame, or even panic, not because aging is painful, but because his false identity begins to crumble. Modern culture worsens this by idolizing youthful bodies, spending billions to erase signs of age, mocking the elderly, promoting fear of death, and glorifying superficial pleasures. As a result, people approach aging with denial, desperation, envy, regret, or bitterness. All of this is unnecessary suffering. Aging becomes frightening only to those who built their lives on illusions. To the one who lives in truth, aging is peaceful, dignified, luminous. The suffering of modern man does not come from aging. It comes from his false concept of aging. Chapter 6: The Rise of Materialism and the Collapse of Inner Life. Materialism is the greatest enemy of healthy aging. When man believes that he is nothing but his body, nothing but flesh, cells, and impulses, he inevitably fears aging because it appears to be the end of everything. Materialism kills the meaning of life. Materialism kills the dignity of age. Materialism kills the connection to the spirit. Modern humanity lives almost entirely outwardly. Chasing wealth. Chasing pleasure. Chasing status. Chasing entertainment. Fleeing silence. Fleeing introspection. Fleeing truth. This outward fixation makes aging unbearable because aging forces inward turning. The body naturally slows as the spirit prepares for deeper reflection, but the materialist sees only loss and resists it with all his might. Thus he experiences anxiety, depression, loss of identity, collapse of purpose. This is not caused by aging. It is caused by the collapse of his false worldview. When the outer life weakens, the inner life must strengthen. But since modern man never cultivated an inner life, he finds nothing within when he finally turns inward. Materialism robbed him of his spiritual foundation. Therefore aging feels like emptiness and fear. But for the one who nurtures his inner life, who builds connection with truth, purity, gratitude, humility, and spiritual striving, aging is a great blessing. It becomes a time of illumination, peace, and preparation. The laws of creation never intended aging to crush man. Only false thinking crushes him. Chapter 7: The Harvest of One's Sowing. Every human being enters old age with a harvest, whether he acknowledges it or not. This harvest is made of every decision, thought, word, and action from youth to adulthood. Nothing is lost. The laws of creation mirror everything back to the soul. In youth, the seed is planted. In adulthood, it grows. In old age, it is harvested. This harvest determines the quality of one's aging. If a person sowed truthfulness, he harvests clarity. If he sowed humility, he harvests peace. If he sowed love, he harvests joy. But if he sowed selfishness, he harvests loneliness. If he sowed arrogance, he harvests humiliation. If he sowed sensuality and excess, he harvests a weakened body and a restless soul. If he sowed ingratitude, he harvests bitterness. This is not punishment. It is law, perfect, just, unbending, and entirely beneficial. The suffering many experience in old age is not caused by aging but by the return of seeds sown in earlier decades. It is a merciful exposure of one's inner state, an opportunity to correct, repent, and realign. Old age reveals what one truly is. Nothing more, nothing less. This revelation is meant to liberate, not destroy. A life lived in purity and striving will bloom beautifully in old age. A life lived in vanity and falsehood will crumble. But even the crumbling is mercy, for it exposes what must be healed. In this way, old age is the most truthful stage of life. It is the mirror of the entire earthly journey. Chapter 8. Vanity, Resistance, and the Fear of Transition. Human suffering in aging does not arise from the natural process itself but from inner opposition to the laws of creation. Aging, in its purity, is gentle, wise, and purposeful. But when the human being resists the natural rhythm of unfolding, suffering emerges like a shadow that was self-cast. Vanity is one of the most destructive forces in this resistance. It compels human beings to cling to youth, not because youth is inherently superior, but because their self-image has become more important to them than truth. Vanity whispers, "Your worth is in how you appear." The spirit replies, "Your worth is in how you radiate." Many refuse to accept the changes in their bodies, not knowing that these changes are merciful invitations to spiritual maturation. The slowing of the limbs calls forth depth of thought. The weakening of external activity draws attention to the inner life. The diminishing of earthly attraction encourages the spirit to withdraw from the transient and seek the eternal. But instead of allowing this transition, many fight relentlessly against what they cannot stop. Fear of death, fear of irrelevance, fear of being forgotten. These fears accumulate because the human spirit has long neglected the truth that life does not end with earthly decline. The fear of transition exists only in those who have become foreign to spiritual reality. Suffering grows where the will resists divine order. Joy grows where the will yields to it. Part 3. The Divine Design in Aging and Old Age. Clarifying the wisdom in the slowing of the body. Chapter 9. Aging is Divine Mercy. Aging is not a punishment, it is mercy woven into the fabric of earthly existence. Were the human body to remain endlessly vigorous, countless individuals would race deeper and deeper into materialism, losing every opportunity for introspection. Humanity would drown in earthly pursuits, forgetting completely that life extends far beyond the physical garment. But aging places natural limits, limits that protect the human spirit from remaining forever entangled in the transient. These limits serve as reminders that earthly life is a journey, not a destination. Every wrinkle is a seal of experience. Every gray hair is an imprint of harvested sowings. Every slowdown is a divine whisper, "Lift your gaze again to the eternal." The body's gradual weakening is perfectly calibrated. It unfolds neither too early nor too late, but according to the inward state of the spirit and the laws governing form. Those who lived superficially feel aging as loss. Those who lived inwardly feel it as liberation. Aging is mercy because it forces the spirit to gently detach from what cannot follow it beyond the threshold of physical death. It prepares the human being for the transition to the next realm. It gives time for reflection, evaluation, and rectification before the final earthly breath. Where the inner life is cultivated, aging becomes a sanctuary. Where the inner life is neglected, aging becomes a burden. The difference lies not in the years, but in the inward posture of the soul. Chapter 10. The Earthly Body's Lawful Decline. The human body is a tool, highly refined, perfectly constructed, but temporary. It obeys the laws of matter, and these laws require rise, peak, decline, and dissolution. Just as a fruit ripens and then softens so its seed may be released, the human body must pass through stages that allow the spirit to disengage from earthly density. The body declines so that the spirit may ascend. The process is lawful, rhythmic, and purposeful. Everything in creation that belongs to matter follows this curve. To expect the body to remain youthful forever is to demand that a tree forever remain in spring without ever entering autumn or winter. Such a demand is childish, and yet it forms the basis of many cultural attitudes toward aging. The decline of the body also reveals something profound. The human spirit is not the body. When the limbs weaken but the inner clarity increases, the truth becomes unmistakable. The essential part of the human being is not aging at all. Indeed, many older individuals testify that while the body slows, the inner vision sharpens. Wisdom, insight, compassion, and spiritual sensitivity can flourish when earthly distractions fade. But only if the human being has lived in harmony with the laws. The lawful decline of the body teaches humility. It teaches acceptance. It teaches reverence for the Creator's design. And it encourages the human being to prepare consciously for the continuation of life beyond earthly form. The decline is not the end. It is the opening of the gate. Chapter 11. The Spirit's Increased Opportunity in Old Age. In youth, the spirit is heavily occupied with building, striving, learning, navigating earthly experiences. In adulthood, it confronts responsibilities, duties, relationships, challenges, and the full force of worldly demands. But in old age, these demands naturally lessen. Strength diminishes, but perception deepens. This is not an accident, it is opportunity. Old age offers the spirit a greater chance for reflection than any earlier stage. The noise of earthly ambition quiets. The chase after recognition loses its appeal. The craving for possessions weakens. The spirit begins to stand more freely, if the human being allows it. Those who embrace inner reflection find old age rich with meaning. They begin to understand the path they have walked. They see their mistakes more clearly, not to despair, but to correct themselves inwardly. They gain wisdom that could not have been grasped in earlier years. And in this period, the bridge to the spiritual world becomes thinner. Thoughts of eternity arise naturally, gently prepared by the laws. The spirit can sense more, feel more, and understand more, if it has not suffocated itself through materialism. Old age is the spirit's season of harvest. Harvest of experiences. Harvest of clarity. Harvest of inward maturity. And for many, it becomes the final opportunity for decisive change before the transition into the beyond. Old age is not decline of life. It is intensification of being, the quiet moment when the spirit can finally listen to what creation has been saying all along. Chapter 12. Old age is preparation for transition. Old age is one of the most sacred phases of human existence. It is the final arc of the earthly journey, where the threads of a lifetime begin to weave together and reveal a fuller picture of one's inner state. It is a preparatory chamber, a quiet sanctum in which the human spirit is meant to detach itself from earthly density and turn its gaze toward the beyond. Far from being a period of decline in value, old age is the height of the earthly pilgrimage, where the spirit stands closest to the boundary between this world and the next. Every gentle weakening of the body, every slowing of earthly movement, is an invitation to inward preparation. For decades, the spirit has gathered impressions, experiences, actions, thoughts, choices, and these impressions now begin to ripen. Old age is the time when the human being must evaluate his sowing and prepare for the reaping that awaits him immediately after passing through the earthly threshold. There is no pause, no idle moment after death. One awakens in the beyond exactly as one is inwardly. Thus, the inner work of old age is of profound significance. It is a time to settle unresolved burdens. Ask forgiveness where needed. Grant forgiveness where withheld. Abandon pride, vanity, and hardened opinions. Seek reconciliation. With oneself, with life, with others, with God. Deepen purity of thought and longing. Reawaken gratitude and humility. When embraced correctly, old age becomes an inner cleansing, a spiritual ordering before the journey continues. The human being is given a final period to refine his will, strengthen his connection to the light, and loosen the earthly threads that have bound him. The body grows weak so the spirit can grow strong. Earthly attachments loosen so spiritual readiness increases. Those who accept this phase with humility experience peace. Those who resist it experience fear, anxiety, and unrest. Old age is not a fall. It is an ascent, if the human being lifts himself toward the truth. It is not an ending. It is a door. It is not a loss. It is a liberation. To understand old age is to understand that earthly life was never meant to be permanent. It is a school that must be left when the learning period is complete. The wise student does not cling to the classroom when the lesson is over, he steps forward into new realms of unfolding. Thus, old age, rightly lived, is preparation for the transition into spiritual life, where the true journey continues. Part 4. The Errors of Contemporary Man. How Humanity Destroys Its Own Old Age. Chapter 13. Overactivity and the Refusal of Inner Quiet. Modern human beings fear quietness. They flee from silence because silence forces them to confront themselves, something most would rather avoid. Therefore, old age, which naturally calls for increased inner stillness, is resisted with all the force of earthly ambition. Many older individuals today continue to chase after activity, distraction, noise, and busyness long after their bodies have signaled that it is time to turn inward. Instead of embracing the spiritual deepening intended for this phase, they clamor for stimulation and outward engagement. This refusal of quiet results in spiritual starvation. Old age is meant to be a time of harvest, but when one continues to scatter seeds of anxiety, activity, entertainment, and restlessness, the harvest becomes confused and barren. The spirit receives no space to breathe, reflect, or grow. Overactivity in old age is one of the greatest errors of contemporary humanity, for it overstrains the body, accelerating suffering, blocks the spirit from inward maturing, prevents the processing of life experiences, distracts from the impending transition to the beyond, maintains earthly attachments that should naturally loosen. Many try to remain young through continual exertion, refusing to acknowledge that each stage of life holds its own divine purpose. The elderly are not meant to mimic youth, they are meant to embody wisdom. The quiet of old age is a gift. It is a spiritual cradle in which the soul can finally listen. But the modern human being, drowned in noise and self-created pressure, refuses the gift and thereby increases his suffering. Only the one who learns to be still will perceive the voice of eternity. Chapter 14. The Deception of Eternal Youth. The modern world worships youth as an idol, and this worship has become one of the most destructive forces in the human experience of aging. Youth has become synonymous with value. Age has become synonymous with loss. This inversion is a profound betrayal of truth. Creation does not value youth above old age. Each stage plays a necessary role in the unfolding of the human spirit. But contemporary humanity, ruled by vanity and materialism, has distorted this natural order. The deception of eternal youth leads many to fear every sign of aging, spend enormous effort trying to prevent what cannot be halted, despise their own bodies as they change, reject wisdom in favor of shallow appearance, measure their worth by the standards of the young, avoid maturity, responsibility, and spiritual depth. Human beings anesthetize themselves with cosmetics, surgeries, drugs, stimulants, and illusions, all to maintain the fleeting form of youth while the soul within remains weak, unprepared, and spiritually immature. But youth is not meant to linger. Creation has no interest in preserving the outer form when the inner being has not used it well. Old age in its purity is beautiful. It bears the marks of lived truth. It reflects depth of experience. It reveals the spirit's journey. It carries the fragrance of wisdom. But because modern humans reject spiritual reality, they cling to the physical shell as if it were their true self. In their blindness, they try to preserve the body beyond its lawful timeline, unwilling to let it fulfill its natural course. The deception of eternal youth is, at its core, a rejection of the Creator's plan. It springs from fear, vanity, and ignorance, and it leads to spiritual emptiness. Only the one who embraces the sacred rhythm of life will discover the dignity and grandeur hidden in aging. Chapter 15. The Loss of Reverence for Elders. One of the most tragic signs of humanity's spiritual decline is the near-total loss of reverence for elders. In earlier times, when people lived more closely aligned with natural laws, older individuals were honored as bearers of experience, wisdom, and guidance. Their presence stabilized families, communities, and the inner life of society. Today, this reverence has collapsed. Elders are seen as burdens instead of blessings. They are pushed aside, replaced, ignored, or stowed away. Their wisdom is undervalued. Their experiences are dismissed. Their inner maturity goes unseen by a generation intoxicated with superficiality. This loss of reverence harms not only the elderly but humanity as a whole. When the young no longer honor the old, the natural chain of spiritual transmission is broken. The flow of lived insight from one generation to another, insight that protects, warns, and instructs, is severed. Societies become rootless, fragile, impulsive, and spiritually immature. To honor the elderly is to honor the laws of creation. To dishonor them is to rebel against those laws. For the elderly themselves, the lack of reverence creates unnecessary suffering. Many feel unwanted, invisible, or useless. This emotional burden harms their inner health and disrupts the peaceful reflection that old age is meant to provide. But elders have a responsibility as well. Reverence is not automatic. It must be enlivened by dignity, wisdom, self-respect, and spiritual clarity. Older individuals who chase youth, cling to vanity, or refuse inner growth undermine the very reverence they seek. Humanity must relearn the sacredness of elders. A society that honors its elders honors its future. A society that rejects them rejects the light. Chapter 16. Loneliness, Despair, and the Collapse of Meaning. One of the deepest sufferings associated with aging today is the growing sense of loneliness and meaninglessness that many older individuals experience. This suffering, however, does not originate in the natural process of aging itself. It arises from the inner emptiness created during a lifetime lived without spiritual anchoring. Loneliness in old age is not a punishment, it is a revelation. It exposes the degree to which a person relied on external things, people, possessions, status, activity, rather than on the inner, spiritual core. When the body weakens and external activities diminish, everything that is not rooted in the spirit falls away. This unveiling can feel like loss, but it is simply truth making itself visible. Why loneliness arises? Lack of inner life. Many reach old age having never cultivated stillness, reflection, prayer, or spiritual searching. When outward stimulation fades, they discover that their inner world is barren. Broken relationships caused by earlier choices. A lifetime of selfishness, stubbornness, hurtfulness, or spiritual indifference often bears fruit in old age as isolation. Misguided expectations. Those who believed their worth came from productivity, youth, or physical beauty feel cast aside when these attributes fade. Resistance to transition. When a person clings to life instead of preparing for the beyond, fear fills the space where trust should lie. Despair is a spiritual warning. Despair in old age is not meant to break the human being, it is meant to wake him up. It signals that the soul has drifted too far from the light and must turn back. If despair is approached correctly, it becomes a gateway to humility and renewal. If resisted, it becomes a chain that drags the soul downward. Despair calls the human being to ask, what is my life really built upon? What have I sown? Where have I misplaced my trust? What remains when earthly supports fall away? The collapse of meaning. Meaning collapses only when life was built on illusions. When meaning is rooted in eternal truth, it never collapses, not even in extreme old age or physical suffering. But those who lived only for the earth lose their sense of purpose once the earth no longer needs them. They feel finished, in the way, or forgotten. This perception arises because the ego is dying while the spirit is being offered a chance to awaken. Loneliness and despair are therefore not signs that old age is cruel, rather, they show that humanity has lived wrongly. Aging does not create suffering. False living does. Old age simply reveals what was hidden all along. Part 5. Awakening to the Truth of Aging. Correcting one's orientation in the light of truth. Chapter 17. The Right Attitude Toward Aging. To experience aging in its true, luminous form, the human being must adopt the correct inner attitude. Without the right attitude, even the natural unfolding of life becomes burdensome. With the right attitude, old age becomes one of the most beautiful gifts creation offers. The right attitude toward aging is built on 3 pillars. 1. Acceptance of the divine order. Every stage of life has a purpose. Childhood is for learning, youth for striving, adulthood for building and forming, and old age for harvesting and preparing for transition. Aging is not a failure of the body, it is a fulfillment of its purpose. It is the law of creation directing the human being inward. Acceptance removes fear. Acceptance strengthens trust. Acceptance opens the door to peace. 2. Gratitude for the path traveled. Many enter old age complaining about the past or resenting the loss of youth. This poisons the final stage of life. The right attitude is gratitude, deep, sincere gratitude. For experiences gained. For lessons learned. For opportunities given. For protection unseen. For the chance to grow spiritually. Gratitude lifts the soul like a light wind. Resentment darkens it like a heavy fog. 3. Willingness to continue growing. Old age is not the end of development. Spiritual growth can, and should, accelerate in later years. The body may slow, but the spirit should awaken. Those who remain teachable, humble, and open are blessed. Those who stiffen into pride, rigidity, and bitterness close the gates of light around themselves. The right attitude transforms old age. With the right attitude, pain becomes purification. Weakness becomes humility. Silence becomes revelation. Solitude becomes inner richness. The end of earthly striving becomes the beginning of spiritual ripening. Aging is not the dimming of life, it is the narrowing of the beam so that the spirit may pass through the doorway into eternity. Chapter 18. Letting go of vanity and earth-bound desires. The greatest burden in old age is not the body, it is vanity. Vanity clings to appearance, to youth, to strength, to social value, to earthly identity. It fights against aging because it believes aging is humiliation or loss. But vanity is not a natural part of the human being. It is a distortion created by the intellect and the ego, both of which fear dissolution. Aging exposes vanity. Old age destroys it. This destruction is merciful, for vanity binds the spirit to the earth and hinders ascent after death. Why vanity must fall? It blinds the human being to spiritual reality. One who is concerned with appearances cannot perceive truth. It strengthens earthly attachments. Vanity makes the body the center of existence instead of the spirit. It creates fear of death. Those who cling to form fear losing it. It corrupts relationships. Vanity seeks admiration, not genuine connection. It blocks humility, the key to spiritual growth. Letting go is liberation. Letting go of vanity means accepting the natural changes of the body, embracing simplicity, releasing the need for approval, valuing inner radiance over outer form, recognizing the soul as the true self. Letting go of earth-bound desires means loosening attachment to possessions, softening cravings for status, wealth, or influence, ending the chase for earthly fulfillment, turning attention toward what is eternal. When these earthly weights are released, the spirit becomes lighter, freer, more receptive to truth. Old age becomes peaceful instead of painful. Aging does not hurt the spirit. Attachment does. Chapter 19. Inner work in later years. The later years of life are the golden phase of inner work. In youth, the human being is busy outwardly. In adulthood, he is responsible for building. But in old age, the spirit finally has room to breathe, reflect, and purify itself. This phase is not passive. It is the most active spiritual period of earthly life. Inner work means reviewing one's life with honesty. Not through regret or pride, but through clarity. What has been gained? What remains to be corrected? What must be forgiven? Seeking truth in every memory. How did each decision shape the spirit? What patterns emerged? What lessons were missed? Cleansing the inner world. Removing bitterness. Releasing grudges. Healing unresolved conflicts. Correcting wrong attitudes. This cleansing has a direct impact on the beyond. A purified soul crosses with ease, while a burdened soul struggles. Strengthening connection to the light. Through prayer, gratitude, silence, contemplation, and noble longing. Old age is the time when the inner voice becomes clearer because outer noise naturally lessens. Deepening compassion and understanding. True wisdom emerges when the spirit sees life from a higher viewpoint. Compassion expands. Judgments soften. Love grows. Letting the spirit lead. The intellect loses its dominance in old age. This is not a loss but a liberation. The spirit regains its rightful throne. The result of true inner work. When inner work is embraced, old age becomes peaceful, meaningful, illuminated, spiritually abundant. A gentle transition into higher existence. Without inner work, old age becomes confusing, fearful, lonely, heavy, materialistically empty. The difference is determined solely by the human being's inner attitude and willingness to turn toward truth. Old age is not the closing of a door, it is the polishing of the key. Chapter 20. Preparing consciously for transition. Transition, what humanity calls death, is not an end but a movement, a continuation, a homeward step. Yet modern man fears it, resists it, hides it, and refuses to think about it until it is too late. But the laws of creation are merciful. They warn, they prepare, they guide, and they always give signs early enough for man to align himself. Old age is one such sign, a herald, a gentle calling, a slowing vibration that signals, prepare. Gather yourself. Become inwardly clear. To prepare consciously for transition is to prepare consciously for life. One cannot separate them. The human spirit is an eternal traveler, moving through the worlds by the attraction of its own nature. And so, when the earthly body begins to grow quieter, heavier, or less agile, the spirit must become more awake, more active, more luminous. This is the natural rhythm ordained from the beginning. Many people assume that preparation for transition means withdrawing from life or becoming passive. But this is false. The laws of creation do not support passivity, they support conscious living. To prepare for transition means to purify one's inner world, especially thoughts and motives. Clarify one's relationships, release resentments, forgive, seek peace. Put earthly affairs in order, not as an act of fear, but of responsibility. Turn one's gaze upward, to gratitude, to recognition, to humility. Strengthen one's connection to the light through honest striving for purity. The greatest preparation is the cultivation of a bright, fearless inner life. Fear dissolves where clarity lies. The human spirit fears transition only because it has become too entangled with earth. But when a person stands firmly in the light, through obedience to the laws, through truth in speech and thought, through purity in intention, transition becomes what it truly is. A doorway, not a grave, a return, not an ending, a release, not a loss. To prepare consciously also means to detach from vanity, from the illusion of control, from the clutching after possessions and recognition. For nothing earthly can cross the threshold. Only the inner substance of one's deeds and one's willing can accompany the spirit. Old age makes this truth clear, often painfully so. But this pain is mercy, a final opportunity for man to reorient himself. Those who accept this mercy with humility rise gently. Those who resist, clutch, or despair only make their transition heavier and more difficult. The light calls all human spirits to awaken before the final earthly breath. Those who answer will find peace, clarity, and courage. Those who delay will find confusion. But even then the laws continue to work for their upliftment, though through firmer means. Conscious preparation is not morbid, it is liberating. It frees man from fear and leads him into truth. And truth alone can make transition a joyful release into greater life. Part 6. Guidance for the Young. Building a bright old age from youth. Chapter 21. How youth shapes old age. Old age does not suddenly appear. It is not an isolated chapter of life. It is the harvest of decades, of thoughts, habits, choices, and sowings. What man experiences in old age, whether clarity or confusion, peace or restlessness, vitality or premature decay, is nothing but the lawful outcome of how he lived in youth and adulthood. In youth the spirit is vibrant, flexible, receptive. Everything is easier to shape. The laws of creation reward youthful exertion with quick results. The choices made in youth take root deeply, forming the foundation upon which the later years stand. Thus the question becomes, what does youth sow? 1. Youth that honors truth will reap clarity in old age. Sincere striving for truth awakens the spirit early. A young person who seeks meaning, who strives to be honest, who resists vanity and falsehood, builds an inner strength that becomes a fountain of peace in old age. 2. Youth that indulges in sensuality, laziness, irresponsibility, or arrogance will reap heaviness and confusion. The spirit becomes entangled, dulled, weakened. The earthly body ages faster because the spirit, instead of rising, drags it downward with wrong volitions. 3. Youth that cultivates gratitude, discipline, and reverence attracts blessings later. A reverent youth becomes a noble elder. The laws always multiply noble sowings. 4. Youth that dishonors elders destroys its own future. A society that mocks old age prepares misery for itself. A person who laughs at the limitations of the aged is unknowingly calling those same conditions toward his own path. The laws return everything, amplified. Youth is the architect of old age. What is built early cannot easily be undone later. This is not punishment but perfect justice. Therefore young people must awaken, now. They must not wait to seek truth. They must not rely on the thought, I will change later. Later becomes too late. Each day, each choice, each thought becomes part of the tapestry that the spirit must wear in the final earthly years. Blessed is the young person who recognizes this truth. Their old age will shine. Chapter 22. Living in harmony with the laws now. Many young people live as though they are immune to the consequences of their actions. Their strength deceives them. Their speed blinds them. Their resilience gives the illusion that the laws of health, morality, purity, and responsibility do not apply to them. But the laws of creation are eternal and uniform. They operate with precision upon every age, every person, every moment. To live out of harmony with these laws, even for a short time, plants seeds that will germinate, grow, and later demand their harvest. The law of sowing and reaping. Every thought, word, and deed is a seed. Youth sows abundantly, often recklessly. But aging brings the harvest. Many of the pains, illnesses, or sorrows of old age are not punishments of the body, but delayed fruits of earlier misalignment with the laws. The law of attraction of homogeneous species. What a young person loves, admires, pursues, and surrounds himself with will shape his character. Degenerate pleasures attract low vibrations that weaken the spirit and hasten decay. Noble desires attract uplifting currents that strengthen the spirit for later life. The law of the cycle. Everything returns. Whatever youth sends out will meet him again, often in magnified form during old age, when resistance is weaker and consequences are harder to deflect. Living in harmony with the laws means thinking purely, speaking truthfully, acting responsibly, respecting the body, honoring the soul, keeping the conscience unobstructed, maintaining inner silence and outward discipline, loving work and avoiding idleness, being humble before the greatness of creation. Youth who live this way build a radiant old age. Their body ages gracefully, their spirit shines, their transition becomes peaceful. Those who ignore the laws must face correction later, through suffering, illness, restlessness, or regret. Yet even these are merciful opportunities for awakening. Harmony today is peace tomorrow. Chapter 23. Building inner strength early. The greatest tragedy of youth is its obsession with outward strength while remaining inwardly weak. Muscles are trained while the will remains flabby. Ambitions are nourished while character is neglected. The result is a generation that appears strong but collapses easily under pressure. Inner strength, not physical energy, sustains a person in old age. Inner strength is the courage to do what is right, the will to resist temptation, the ability to stand alone when necessary, the commitment to truth even when it costs, the endurance to pass through trials without bitterness, the humility to learn, the purity that keeps the conscience sharp. This strength cannot be built suddenly in old age. The spirit must practice while the body is still agile. Just as a tree grows firm in its early years, so the human spirit establishes its stability early. How can youth build inner strength? 1. By choosing effort over comfort. Ease weakens, effort ennobles, work strengthens the will. 2. By embracing responsibility. Every fulfilled duty builds spiritual muscle. 3. By resisting the pull of the crowd. Following trends weakens individuality. Thinking independently develops clarity. 4. By cultivating purity in thoughts. Every pure thought refines and strengthens the spirit. 5. By practicing silence and reflection. Stillness is nourishment, noise is depletion. 6. By keeping firm boundaries. Every boundary strengthens self-mastery. 7. By anchoring in gratitude. Gratitude opens the spirit to uplifting currents. Why must this be built early? Because old age magnifies what already exists. If the spirit is weak, old age brings fear. If the spirit is strong, old age brings wisdom. If the spirit is impure, old age brings restlessness. If the spirit is pure, old age brings peace. The young who build inner strength now prepare a bright, joyful, honorable old age, a crown rather than a burden, a culmination rather than a collapse. Chapter 24. Restoring Reverence for Elders. Reverence for elders is not sentimental respect. It is recognition of spiritual law. Humanity has forgotten this. In ages past, the presence of an elder in a home, village, or gathering was a blessing. Elders were natural bearers of calm, clarity, memory, and inwardness. Their slowed movement and quiet demeanor served as a constant reminder that life has a purpose beyond striving, noise, and ambition. They were bridges between the earthly and the eternal. But modern culture, intoxicated with speed and obsessed with youthful appearance, has pushed elders to the edges of life. They are treated as burdens, inconveniences, or reminders of the death people fear. What a terrible loss, and a grave violation of spiritual law. Why reverence for elders is spiritually essential. Elders carry accumulated experiences, not for worship, but for illumination. A society without memory collapses. Their slowing bodies reflect a rising opportunity for the spirit. Youth often sees weakness, but the laws reveal ripening. Reverence opens channels of blessing. When a younger person honors an elder sincerely, they align with order, humility, and gratitude, qualities that uplift the soul. Disrespect for elders brings future consequences. Whoever mocks the aged unknowingly invites a harsh old age for themselves. The restoration of reverence begins not with ceremonies or forced gestures, but with inner recognition. To restore reverence, see elders as living reminders of truth. Seek their wisdom, even when unspoken. Protect their quiet. Encourage their dignity. Offer service without pity or condescension. Most importantly, treat them as souls ascending toward transition, not as people descending into uselessness. Reverence for elders reawakens reverence for life, for order, for God. Without it, no society can flourish. Part 7. Hope for those already in old age. The path of awakening for the elderly. Chapter 25. Awakening even in late years. It is never too late to awaken, for the laws of creation recognize the spirit, not the calendar. Even in old age, even in advanced frailty, the spirit can rise, clarify, and transform. Many elderly people believe the opposite. They say, "It is too late to change. My life is already spent." I have wasted too many years. God will not hear me now. These thoughts are false. They arise from the intellect's narrow viewpoint, not from truth. The spirit does not age in the earthly sense. It can be renewed at any moment, if the will turns upward. Why awakening is still possible. Old age is the time of thinning veils. The earthly body loosens its hold. The intuition grows more accessible. The spirit feels more clearly. The laws respond immediately to genuine volition. A single honest turning of the will has greater power than years of drifting. The light is constantly calling every soul. No one is abandoned unless they themselves refuse the call. Awakening in late years means recognizing truth without resistance, admitting errors without self-condemnation, letting go of pride, stubbornness, and old grudges, quietly reordering the inner life, cultivating trust in the Creator, allowing oneself to be led by the light. There is great dignity in such awakening. Some of the most radiant souls transition from earth after only a short period of conscious striving. The laws reward earnestness, not quantity of time. Blessed is the elderly person who says, I will begin now. Chapter 26, Turning the Will Toward the Light. The will is the true ruler of the spirit. Even in old age, especially in old age, the will remains within the elder's control. The body may weaken, the memory may dim, the steps may slow, but the will remains capable of choosing upward or downward. To turn the will toward the light means to desire what is pure, noble, truthful, and luminous. Desire attracts substance. Substance forms reality. Even the smallest movement of the will sets new currents in motion. What does turning the will toward the light look like? Forgiving where one once hated. Even silently, even without reconciliation, forgiveness is liberation. Expressing gratitude for life lived. Gratitude purifies the soul and opens it to joy. Putting away bitterness and resentment. These energies darken the soul more than any physical ailment. Taking up an attitude of humility. Pride is one of the greatest barriers to light in old age. Seeking truth sincerely, even if one once rejected it. The light receives the repentant and the awakened without prejudice. Choosing peace over conflict. Every peaceful thought draws higher currents close. Releasing fear of transition. Fear binds the soul, trust frees it. When an elder turns their will toward the light, even after long years of confusion or error, the transformation can be powerful. Their eyes brighten, their face softens, their presence becomes calming, their final months or years become luminous and filled with meaning. The will is the key. And the key is always accessible. Chapter 27, Peace, Dignity, and Radiance in Old Age. Old age was meant to be a crown, a culmination, a time of wisdom and gentle clarity. A period when the earthly experiences ripen into spiritual understanding and quiet depth. But for many it has become a time of fear, humiliation, and despair. Why? Because humanity has severed itself from the laws that would have guided it into a bright old age. Yet even now, even amidst widespread confusion, peace, dignity, and radiance can be restored. Peace in old age. Peace comes when the spirit stops struggling against the laws. When it accepts life as a continuous, meaningful journey. When it relinquishes control and rests in trust. Peace is born from inner truthfulness, honest self-reflection, forgiveness, gratitude, trust in divine guidance. When these are present, peace flows naturally. Dignity in old age. Dignity does not depend on strength, beauty, or mental sharpness. It springs from the spirit, not the body. A dignified elder carries themselves with humility, speaks truthfully and simply, does not cling to past importance, accepts help without shame, radiates quiet authority without domination, shows reverence for life in all things. Dignity is the natural expression of an awakened soul. Radiance in old age. Radiance comes from purity. It shines through the eyes, through the tone of voice, through the atmosphere surrounding the elder. It cannot be imitated or manufactured. Radiance is the outward manifestation of the spirit's upward striving. An elder becomes radiant when their will is aligned with the light. Their conscience is clear. Their thoughts are pure. Their heart is free from bitterness. They have forgiven themselves and others. They welcome transition as a continuation of life. Such elders are blessings to their families, their communities, and to all who encounter them. Their presence uplifts. Their words heal. Their silence speaks truth. Old age, lived rightly, is not decline, it is ascent. Not darkness, it is softening light. Not ending, it is preparation for higher existence. Not loss, it is fulfillment. Chapter 28, Preparing for the Beyond Without Fear. Fear of death is one of humanity's greatest self-inflicted torments. It is a distortion born of ignorance, materialism, and the arrogance of the intellect. When a person fears death, it is never the spirit that trembles, only the earth-bound intellect, which cannot comprehend anything beyond what it can measure and touch. To prepare for the beyond without fear, one must first correct the false image of transition. Death is not annihilation. It is not loss. It is not punishment. It is simply the loosening of the earthly garment so that the spirit may continue its journey in a realm more suited to its nature. Why fear arises? Fear arises when a person inwardly senses that their life was misused. The conscience stirs and demands accountability. The attachment to earthly pleasures has not been released. The intellect has smothered the intuition. The individual has never reflected on the purpose of existence. False teachings have painted the beyond as a threat or darkness. In truth, the beyond is governed by the same perfect laws that govern earthly life, the laws of sowing and reaping, of attraction of homogeneous species, of spiritual gravity, of clarity and justice. These laws do not seek to frighten, they simply express truth. How one prepares inwardly. Preparation is not ritualistic. It is not achieved by fear-driven religious fervor. It is simple, truthful, and deeply human. Make peace with your past. Acknowledge errors. Do not cling to them. Offer them up to truth. Forgive others and yourself. Forgiveness loosens dense, binding threads that hinder ascent. Release earthly attachments. Not possessions alone, but pride, bitterness, vanity, ambition. Cultivate gratitude. Gratitude opens the soul and brightens the transition. Awaken trust in the Creator. Not blind belief, but quiet recognition of perfect order. Turn your will toward light. This is the most powerful preparation of all. How one prepares outwardly. Simplify life. Put affairs in order. Bless those you love. Speak truthfully. Seek quietude rather than noise. Surround yourself with purity, people, thoughts, intentions. Many discover that when the fear of death dissolves, the fear of life also vanishes. The spirit stands upright again. Old age becomes luminous, and the transition becomes a natural, peaceful step forward. Part 8. The Mystery of Transition. The last steps on earth and the first steps beyond. Chapter 29, The Spiritual Meaning of the Slowing Down. The slowing of the body in old age is often seen as decline, loss, or misfortune. In truth, it is purposeful. It is a divine mercy woven into the laws of creation. As earthly life nears its completion, the body begins to reduce its activities. The intellect loses its former dominance. Desires weaken. Rest becomes more natural. Movement becomes gentle. The senses soften. This is not regression, it is preparation. Why the slowing down is spiritually necessary. It loosens the spirit's attachment to the body. A strong, restless body holds the spirit firmly. Slowing down creates space. It allows the intuitive perception to rise. When intellect quiets, the spirit perceives more clearly. It draws the person inward. The elderly naturally reflect more, speak less, and feel deeper meaning. It weakens earthly desires. Loss of appetite, reduced ambition, less interest in trivial things, these are signs that the spirit is turning homeward. It prepares the soul for the lighter vibration of the beyond. The coarser earthly body must gradually recede so the finer cloak can become active. The slowing down is a teacher. In slowing down, life teaches patience, humility, detachment, quietude, depth, trust, acceptance, simplicity. Youth pushes outward, old age draws inward. This shift is not accidental, it mirrors the deeper journey of the soul. The tragedy of resisting the slowing. Many fight this process. They fear appearing weak. They cling to old identities. They resist rest. They force their bodies to perform. They drown silence with noise. They fear becoming useless. But resistance only deepens suffering. Acceptance restores dignity and harmony. To surrender willingly to the slowing down is to align with God's will. It is to walk with creation, not against it. And in this surrender, the spirit grows radiant. Chapter 30 The Sacredness of the Final Earthly Days. The final days before transition are among the most sacred of a person's earthly existence. They are a threshold, an intersection between two worlds. At this time, the earthly body grows dim while the spiritual body grows more active. The spirit stands nearer to the beyond than to earth. What makes these days sacred? The veil between worlds thins. The spirit begins to perceive impressions from the beyond. Earthly time falls away. Days feel elongated, or shortened, the sense of sequence dissolves. The intuition becomes more prominent. Many elders suddenly speak truths, offer profound insights, or recall forgotten memories. The soul draws nearer to its harvest. The weave of fate approaches its moment of resolution. Loved ones in the beyond stand closer. They may assist, they may watch, but they never interfere with free will. The light works strongly on the departing soul. It calls, it clarifies, it purifies. How families should treat this sacred period. Sadly, in modern times, families rob the dying of the dignity and depth of these days. Noise fills the room, distractions abound, machines crowd the bed, conversations avoid the truth, fear dominates. But the sacredness can be restored. Families should create quietude around the departing soul. Avoid emotional outbursts that cling. Speak softly and truthfully. Encourage trust, peace, and release. Pray, not out of fear, but out of blessing. Avoid forcing life to linger beyond its natural course. Hold the space with reverence. A soul departing in peace carries upward a bright vibration that aids its transition. The elder's inner experience. As earthly strength fades, earthly worries loosen. Regrets come forward to be resolved. Grudges melt. Forgiveness flows. Great clarity may arise. Silence becomes comforting. The presence of the beyond becomes real. These final days are not an ending. They are a beginning. A lifting. A homecoming. Chapter 31 The Moment of Release. There comes a moment when the spirit separates completely from the earthly body. This moment is profound, orderly, and governed by unbreakable laws. It is not chaos. It is not darkness. It is not horror. It is the most natural event in earthly existence. What truly happens at the moment of release? The silver cord, the energetic connection, loosens fully. Once it dissolves, the spirit cannot return to the body. The spirit steps out, wearing the finer cloak. This transition is gentle, not abrupt. The person immediately feels lighter. All earthly pain dissolves. There is clarity, ease, and freedom. The soul sees its surroundings with new clarity. It may see loved ones, helpers, or the plane to which it is drawn. The laws draw it to its homogeneous environment. It cannot choose freely. It is drawn to where its inner condition belongs. Awareness increases. The spirit knows, it understands itself as never before. The variations of the release. A peaceful release follows a life of sincerity, humility, and inner striving. The soul rises easily. A turbulent release occurs when strong earthly attachments cling to the departing spirit. A fearful release happens when the soul resisted truth or lived in contradictions. A darkened release results from a life steeped in vices, hatred, and spiritual inertia. But even then, justice reigns, not punishment. Each soul goes exactly where its nature draws it. What determines the direction of ascent or descent? Not belief. Not religion. Not last-minute rituals. Not human wishes. Only the inner condition of the spirit, the will it cultivated during life. Why the moment is never chaotic? Because God's laws are perfect, incorruptible, and entirely reliable. There is no randomness, no chance, no exception, no injustice. Every human being will, at that moment, experience truth revealed. How the living should respond. With serenity. With trust. With reverence. With gratitude for the person's earthly journey. With the blessing. Go in peace, and rise toward the light. Chapter 32, The Continuity of Life. Life does not end. It transforms, unfolds, and continues in accordance with the immutable laws woven into creation. Aging, decline of physical strength, and the nearing of earthly departure do not signal an extinguishing, but rather a transition into another stretch of the unbroken path of personal becoming. To recognize the continuity of life is to lift the veil of fear that often shrouds old age. Human beings fear aging because they believe it leads toward nothingness. They mourn their own weakening because they imagine that the body is the totality of their existence. But the body is only an instrument, a garment worn for a particular stage of learning in gross matter. It is not the self, and therefore cannot signify the end of self when it wears out. In old age, the soul begins to loosen from its heavy physical covering. This quiet loosening is often perceived as slowing down, forgetting, detaching from the feverish pursuits of youth and adulthood. Yet beneath these outward signs, something profound is occurring. The spirit turns inward. It begins to reach for that which is eternal, that which has always called from within. This stage is not a decline, but a refinement. Just as the fruit tree spends its final season producing its sweetest fruits, the human spirit, in its later years, gathers wisdom, clarity, humility, and depth, qualities which will accompany it into the beyond. The earthly part diminishes so that the spiritual may rise. Those who understand the continuity of life no longer cling to earth with fear or despair. They accept aging as a wise preparation and see in every wrinkle, every slowing of step, every quiet morning, a gentle reminder, you are nearing home. When one knows that life continues, the burdens of old age become lighter. The pains lose their sting. The body's frailty becomes an invitation to reflection, and the heart grows calm in the knowledge that nothing real is lost. Only the temporary falls away, the essential moves forward. To live old age with this understanding is to live without fear. It is to walk toward transition with dignity, clarity, and gratitude, knowing that the thread of consciousness is unbroken, and that the best fruits of one's earthly life will blossom even more fully in the next realm. Old age becomes not an end, but a bridge. Part 9. Old age is the crown of earthly existence. Old age is not a punishment. It is not a fading into irrelevance. It is the crown, the culmination, of one's earthly journey. All the seeds planted in youth and adulthood ripen here. All the consequences of one's choices, attitudes, and deeds gather into a harvest. To see old age rightly is to recognize its dignity. In this final earthly phase, the soul stands at the summit and looks back over the valleys it crossed, the storms it survived, and the fields it cultivated. There is solemnity in this vantage point, but also radiance. For the laws of creation do not reward youth or physical strength, they reward maturity of spirit. Old age is meant to shine. Not with the brilliance of ambition, but with the gentle glow of wisdom, gratitude, humility, and inner strength. When aligned with truth, old age becomes the period of greatest inward beauty. Chapter 33, Old Age is Fulfillment. In the Grail-inspired understanding of life, fulfillment is not measured by wealth, status, or accomplishments. It is measured by the flowering of the spirit, by how much clarity, love, insight, and maturity have been won through life's experiences. Old age is the moment when these inner treasures should reach their fullness. Every experience of earlier years, joy, struggle, success, failure, was meant to teach something essential. Nothing was wasted. Even the bitter events had a purpose: to refine the character, sharpen perception, and strengthen the will toward the good. Now, in old age, the fruits of this long cultivation are ready. Fulfillment in old age is felt as inner peace, because the storms no longer confuse. Understanding, because one sees the meaning behind life's events. A gentle outlook, because judgment has turned into compassion. Gratitude, because the soul perceives the wisdom in its path. Readiness, because nothing is clung to with desperation. Old age fulfilled in this way is not a burden to oneself or others. Instead, it is a blessing, a fragrance of wisdom that enriches any environment. The fulfilled elder becomes a silent teacher, even without speaking. Their calm presence carries meaning. Their eyes reveal depth. Their words strike the heart because they come from lived truth. But fulfillment does not come automatically with age. It is the result of how one lived. Those who resisted life's lessons, who clung to vanity, pride, envy, or selfishness, enter old age not fulfilled but embittered. They find the phase uncomfortable because it exposes what was neglected. Yet even for such individuals, the door to fulfillment is not closed. Old age can still open them, soften them, awaken them, if they are willing to let go and turn toward the light. Fulfillment is possible at any moment a person truly wants it. Old age is the final earthly opportunity to complete what was left unfinished. Chapter 34. Wisdom is a spiritual radiance. Wisdom is not acquired through information, age alone, or intellectual learning. It arises from the spirit. It is born in the individual who has lived consciously, reflected deeply, and allowed the truth of life's laws to impress itself upon them. In old age, true wisdom expresses itself not as superiority, but as radiance. It is a quiet glow, felt more than explained, emanating from a heart that has understood the essentials of life. The wise elder no longer concerns themselves with trivialities. They no longer chase ambitions. They no longer fight battles of ego. Their attention turns to the lasting. Wisdom manifests as calmness in the face of difficulty, discernment without harshness, counsel that uplifts, not controls, compassion rooted in clarity, detachment from unnecessary burdens, a profound appreciation for simplicity. This radiance is spiritual, not intellectual. It comforts others. It strengthens the weak. It draws the troubled into peaceful reflection. People feel uplifted merely by being near a truly wise elder, because such an elder becomes a mirror of what all human beings are meant to become. In the laws of creation, the closer the soul draws to truth, the more luminous it becomes. This luminosity permeates the personality. It softens the features, warms the tone of voice, and creates a gentle authority that no earthly power can replicate. But wisdom's radiance can only appear when vanity, stubbornness, self-deception, and material craving have fallen away. Thus the task of old age is not to complain about fading strength, but to polish the inner mirror so that the light within can shine freely. Chapter 35. The elder is a beacon. Every community, every family, every generation needs elders who stand as beacons, pointing the way, offering stability, preserving clarity, and reminding the young of what truly matters. The elder is meant to be a guide, not a dictator. A stabilizing presence, not a source of fear. A bearer of lived truth, not mere tradition. A source of peace, not bitterness. An example of dignity, not self-pity. But one cannot shine as a beacon unless one has purified oneself. A beacon must be clear. It must stand firmly. It must not flicker with resentment, anxiety, or unresolved conflicts. The elder's task is therefore inward. To stand upright before the truth. To correct what is still crooked. To forgive where old wounds linger. To release what no longer belongs. To cultivate clarity in thought and purity in will. When this inner work is done, the elder naturally becomes a light for others. Their presence encourages the young to take life seriously, but joyfully. Their insights prevent the inexperienced from falling into avoidable mistakes. Their dignity elevates the community. Such an elder does not need to speak often. Their life speaks. In a world increasingly driven by haste, superficiality, and confusion, the role of elders as beacons is more important than ever. Without them, society becomes rootless. With them, it becomes anchored to what is true, noble, and enduring. To grow old is to acquire the possibility of this profound service. Old age becomes a blessing not only for the individual, but for everyone around them. Chapter 36. The Elder is a Servant of the Light. To be an elder is not merely to have lived long, it is to have ripened. Years alone do not confer wisdom or dignity, only inner development does. Therefore, the highest calling of old age is not to be served, but to serve the light. This service is not a burden. It is not an obligation imposed from the outside. It is the natural expression of a soul that has matured, clarified, and grown luminous through the experiences of earthly life. Just as a lamp naturally shines when lit, so does the refined elder radiate goodness simply by being. To serve the light means living each day in alignment with truth, embodying purity in thoughts, words, and deeds, offering guidance without pride, uplifting others through one's calm presence, being a bridge between the earthly and the spiritual, demonstrating what a fully human, awakened life looks like. In a world darkened by haste, confusion, materialism, and emotional turbulence, the elder who serves the light becomes a point of orientation. Without preaching, they inspire. Without demanding, they encourage. Without condemning, they correct by example. The elder as a servant of the light speaks only when needed, and in few words. Their authority does not come from age, but from spiritual maturity. People feel uplifted around them because their inner flame burns steadily. This service also requires humility. A true servant of the light understands that they are only a channel, never the source. They let go of the desire to control others. They let go of vanity and the need to be admired. They let go of bitterness over the past or anxiety about the future. They stand in quiet readiness, listening inwardly, responding outwardly when the laws of life nudge them to speak or act. The more deeply an elder serves the light, the quieter they become, not out of weakness but out of power. They no longer waste words. They no longer scatter their energies. Their entire demeanor becomes concentrated, purposeful, and noble. Such an elder transforms homes, communities, and generations for years to come, even after leaving the earth. Their influence continues to work silently in the souls they touched, guiding, strengthening, and uplifting them long after the physical presence is gone. This is the crowning purpose of earthly old age. To let the spirit shine so brightly that others glimpse the light through it. Conclusion. When the veil finally falls, there comes a moment when the earthly body can no longer hold the spirit. The final breath approaches. The senses dim. The external world grows distant. Loved ones gather near, but the individual begins to withdraw inwardly, as though listening for a distant call. This moment has been feared, misunderstood, and avoided by humanity for centuries. Yet when seen in the light of truth, it is nothing to fear. It is the natural and beautiful conclusion of one stage of life and the beginning of another. When the veil falls, the spirit finally steps out of its heavy garment of flesh. The experience is often described, by those who returned from the threshold, as one of lightness, clarity, expansion, and awakening. What was blurred becomes sharp. What was confusing becomes meaningful. The earthly body, with all its pains and limitations, remains behind. But the person, conscious, awake, vibrant, moves forward into a more refined realm where thought is clearer, perception deeper, and life more vivid. Everything one cultivated during earthly life comes with them. Their character, their maturity, their inner orientation, their strength, their weaknesses, their will. Nothing is lost except the physical shell. The falling of the veil is therefore not an end but a revelation. It exposes who we truly are, stripped of excuses and pretense. For the laws of creation ensure that every soul enters the beyond at the exact wavelength of its inner condition. If one spent old age preparing inwardly, loosening earthly attachments, living truthfully, and serving the light, the moment of departure becomes serene, almost majestic. It is like stepping across a threshold with calm readiness. But if one clung to materialism, pride, bitterness, or self-deception, the transition becomes more difficult. Not because God punishes, but because the soul confronts the reality of what it made of itself. The conclusion of earthly life is therefore not a moment to dread, but to honor. It is the moment when the wanderer returns from a long journey and stands before the gate of home, carrying the harvest of all they have sown. Epilogue. A call to humanity. This book is not merely about aging. It is about life itself, from youth to old age, from ignorance to awakening, from fear to understanding. Aging is only one chapter of the eternal journey of the human spirit, but it is the chapter that reveals most clearly whether a person has lived rightly or wasted their strength. Humanity stands today at a crossroads. The world grows increasingly restless, noisy, and distracted. Youth glorifies speed and sensation. Adults lose themselves in ambition and distraction. Elders often feel forgotten, misunderstood, or irrelevant. And yet, the truth remains. Life is governed by immutable laws, and every soul is called to awaken. Aging is a divine gift meant to lead the spirit home. Old age is the crown of earthly existence when lived rightly. This epilogue is therefore a call. A call for the youth, to build now what they will harvest later, to respect the elders, and to live in harmony with the laws so their old age may shine. A call for adults, to examine their priorities, correct their course, and choose that which nourishes the spirit instead of draining it. A call for the elderly, to rise, even now, into clarity, humility, and inner greatness. It is never too late to awaken. It is never too late to turn toward the light. A call for humanity, to restore reverence for life, for aging, for wisdom, and for the spiritual truths that alone give life meaning. For only a humanity that honors both the beginning and the end of earthly life can find peace, harmony, and true progress. Let this book be a gentle flame placed in your hands. May its light guide you, comfort you, and awaken in you the longing for what is eternal. Appendix 1. Key Principles of Aging in the Light of Truth. Aging reveals the consequences of earlier choices. The body declines so the spirit may rise. Old age is meant to be a time of wisdom, calm, and spiritual preparation. The beyond is a continuation, not an end. 2. Daily reflections for the elder. Today I choose gratitude over bitterness. I loosen myself from unnecessary earthly attachments. I prepare inwardly for the transition that awaits all. I radiate peace to those around me. I stand before the light with humility and readiness. 3. Daily reflections for the young. What I build today shapes who I will become tomorrow. I honor my elders and learn from their lived experience. I choose clarity over impulse. I align my actions with the laws of truth. 4. Practices for inner strength in later years. Silent morning reflection. Evening review of one's day. Simplification of life. Releasing old grudges. Acts of quiet service. Deepening reverence and gratitude. 5. Questions for personal growth. What am I still holding onto that I must release? What have I learned from life so far? What unfinished inner work calls for my attention? How can I serve the light more today? What legacy of character, not possessions, am I leaving behind? 6. A prayer for peace in old age. May the light guide my steps. Purify my intentions. Strengthen my will. Soften my heart. And prepare my spirit for the journey ahead.